The East African Community Heads of State have converged in Kampala to discuss key sectors that can propel the region's economy to the lofty heights of middle class. Yet this comes at the time of deep-seated suspicion among its leaders and slow implementation of infrastructure projects. Can the community shake off the shackles of bureaucratic dysfunction, suspicion and petty rivalry to deliver its citizenry from the trap of poverty to wealth? On the spotlight is the Executive Director of Siatini, Uganda, Jen Seruwaginalunga, and Mwambutsa Ndebesa, a political historian, done at Makerere University, and economics lecturer at Makerere University Business School, Ramadan Gobi. And lady, welcome to the show. The spotlight is on you tonight. Good evening.
Good evening.
Let me begin with you, Mr. Ramadan Gobi. As we hold the heads of state retreat, we have the Rwandan President Paul Kagame conspicuously absent from the Kampala meeting. This comes at a time of deep-seated suspicion between Uganda and Rwanda. Is this not an obstacle?
Thank you, and good evening to all our viewers. I think the issues of East Africa have a historical kind of perspective to them. These politicians know them better. This is how the East African community in the first place actually collapsed because of some kind of suspicion is between leaders of countries, some issues which they couldn't agree on and settle amicably. When you read the history of the old East African community, you know, when you build an integration which is not based on the interests of the common man, you and me, but it is a kind of gameplay of the powerful people around, you are bound to get a number of issues, you know, similar to what we are seeing today. The EAC has been moving quite well, especially when the leaders agreed on the fast tracking and the coalition of the willing, and those were for the slow pace. And Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya were among the group that had chosen initially to move faster towards the political federation, with Tanzania and Burundi preferring a slow kind of pace. Then all of a sudden, things changed in the middle of the game, and we started to see Uganda going towards, you know, getting more closer to Tanzania. You remember how we changed the route of so many infrastructure projects we are talking about, the pipeline, even the standard gauge railway itself has certain issues. So it is quite surprising eventually that Rwanda is not, you know, quite so as enthusiastic, you know, about working with us as they were at the beginning. I'm yet to really get concrete information on why we have been hearing a lot of things, and I don't want to really
speculate.
Yes.
But Professor,
speculations.
Mr. Mwambutsa Ndebesa, he's talked about the coalition of the willing. How can we in the region have a coalition of the willing, yet we're supposed to move as a region? Because yes, there was that point when there was a coalition of the willing.
That's the dilemma. There is the principle of variable geometry, which is enshrined in the treaty. And under the principle of variable geometry, it is allowed for some countries to move faster than others, or to some countries to undertake an integration process, and others can wait and they will join later on. But that poses a dilemma, as well as posing a solution to problems, because if you force people to move together, others may refuse, and that could be a source of breaking of the East African community. But also when you allow under that principle of variable geometry for some people to undertake certain programs and leaving behind others, it could also lead to a breakup of East African community. So it is a dilemma. Let me give another example that is happening right now, and which they are going to discuss tomorrow, and we are going to discuss it maybe here. There is a signing of the Economic Partnership Agreement with the EU, which is supposed to be undertaken as a region. However, Kenya has already signed, and yet they were supposed to sign together, and so is Rwanda. Uganda is on the fence. Tanzania actually has refused to sign that agreement, and so is Burundi, because Burundi, after all, is under sanctions by the EU. Now, in that case, we are also more or less practicing variable geometry. But it is very interesting that one of the bones of contention in the East African region is an external factor, that you have got signing an EU partnership agreement with East Africa, and it becomes a source of division within East Africa. It's very funny that one of the issues that is likely to divide East Africa is over an external issue. So it is a problem area. But let me put it this way, Mr. Moderator, that one of the challenges that we are facing in the East African community integration process is lack of a good governance and a democracy protocol. Here I am bringing in the element, or in the integration process, can we bring in the question of good governance, rule of law, constitutionalism, democracy, security issues? It seems that one has been left out, and I have been saying in even other fora that there was a draft protocol for good governance. It was drafted as far back as 2011. It was already ready even when Madam Chilaso was still the Deputy Secretary General, political integration process. Fast tracking. Up to now, 8 years down the road, they have failed to adopt the good governance protocol that was pointing out some of these issues which can cause problems of integration in the region. And I think it was deliberate, because the good governance protocol would have been, I think, a legal and
so where have we fallen short on the good governance protocol, in your view?
Within East Africa or
Uganda?
The whole of East Africa has problems. I mean, you go to Sudan, you go to Burundi, but even Uganda, we have had problems of good governance. We have failed, for example, to have an independent electoral commission in the right sense of the word. We are amending constitutional provisions without actually consulting the people, and we have got a lot of militarization of political competition and very many others.
Okay,
and so is Kenya. So we need in place a good governance protocol to be a framework, legal document that we can refer to when we are holding our leaders in the East African region accountable.
Okay, let me bring in Jen Nalunga here. You are an expert in trade negotiations, right? And EPA, it appears Kenya was very fast and Rwanda to sign with the European Union. Exactly. And Uganda and Tanzania are dragging their feet. Exactly what is going on? Why is Uganda and Tanzania cagey on the EPAs?
Okay, maybe I'll go. Okay, good evening, viewers. I will go back to the whole issue, the question you have asked about the region, whether we are moving together as a region. The way I look at it, we have, as a region, we have achieved a lot when it comes to the regional integration project. We have the Common Market Protocol, we have a number of institutions. But what we are lacking is when we don't seem to have a clear destination, a clear direction. In fact, when it comes to push, when push comes to shove, you see each country going its own way. Mr. Mwamse and you have talked about the EPAs. The EPAs are an agreement, a trade agreement with a third party, because we are dealing with the European Union. And if we open up, when you look at the EPA, we are supposed to open up our economy, 82% of our trade with the EU. When we open up, we can't industrialize. We can't. But because Kenya is sending flowers to Europe, they say we are going to sign. Because Europe slapped a tax on the flowers. And because of flowers, Kenya signed. Rwanda also signed, I don't know why. Uganda is on the borderline. They want to sign, they don't want to sign. We don't know what's happening. It's only Tanzania who is saying if we sign this agreement, we are not going to industrialize. But you find all of the East African countries are talking about industrialization. But when it comes to implementing it, it isn't being implemented.
How does it become an obstacle to industrializing?
Because any country, if you want to industrialize, to add value to any sector, you have to protect it. For example, we opened up, and this is also an issue which is on the agenda, the summit's agenda, the issue of the textile. Because AGOA, we have, you know AGOA, we got AGOA, but the heads of state told the Council of Ministers that we need to revive our textile industry. So we had to increase our taxes on the second-hand clothes. The American companies went to their Congress and said the East Africans have to remove those taxes because the US is benefiting a lot from the second-hand clothes coming here. Now what has happened, Kenya agreed to reduce the taxes. Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, because Rwanda has totally refused. Uganda, again, we are debating. Tanzania has also refused to remove the taxes. So you see, as a region, we are not moving together. And
how do you reconcile the fact that Kenya, which has decided to remove the taxes, seems to be benefiting more under the AGOA than the rest of us?
Yeah, because we didn't, because when we got AGOA, we didn't plan for it. You know what happened? We went to Bugorobi there, got some girls, started assembling here and there. So we are not benefiting from AGOA. But again, even if Kenya is benefiting, when you look at the value chain, the textile and apparel value chain, we are better off developing our own homegrown textile industry, from growing cotton, from the yarn, then textiles and all that. But we need to protect that sector. But Patrick, what I want to say, when you look at the East African region, we lack a hegemony. Take an example of the European Union. The European Union has Germany and France. They are the hegemony. You know, the flying geese, they lead, they take the lead. And they are willing to sacrifice a bit to be able to move as European Union. Uganda, the East African region, Kenya would have done that. But Kenya is, I don't know, they are selfish, if I can say so. So any region has to have a hegemony to move. But the East African region, we don't have it. So when it comes to difficult issues, each country goes its own way.
Okay, Ramadan, for using the example of the AGOA, an opportunity that was given us, and we never even used it. You know, we could have made even $500 million from that industry, from the garment industry. We failed. It's open to us. We're supposed to be growing cotton, maybe in Busoga and Kasese, and have the apparels made here in Kampala or in Jinja, and export them to an American market, tax-free. We haven't taken that opportunity.
You know, Patrick, you've heard what my sister was talking about. In economics, we have what we call mercantilism. These are the views of the early kind of traders who started actually this business of trade across borders. The idea of mercantilists was that a country to build wealth, to accumulate wealth, should export, but should not import. That is the bottom line. try to find ways of exporting as much as you can by restricting imports. They looked at trade as a zero-sum game, that once you open up your markets, you are going to lose as others take advantage of you. And when Adam Smith came, around 200 years ago, he tried to take away that kind of idea from people by showing that we can have mutual benefit when we trade together. Specialize in what you do better, I specialize in what I do better, we exchange. I want to tell you that everywhere in the world today, mercantilism has come back, is alive. Countries have started to be inward looking once again.
America first.
Including big powers like the US. You know, the other time you saw what Trump said. You have seen what has been going on in the UK with the Brexit. Let us get out of this European Union. It's taking our jobs, and let us concentrate on our, you know, competitiveness. I think it's a mistake for East Africa to look at trade again through the mercantilist eye view. I know that East Africa is still very vulnerable to you know, these big guys in the world, like the European Union, like China, like the US, and so on. But the gameplay in a globalized environment, in a globalized world, does not give us space to be inward looking. For example, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for us to say that let us close the door on the European Union. We shouldn't sign this. We need to negotiate. We need to just get bargaining power as a region. We need to get together, all of us, the 5 countries. Let us first agree on what we want. Because now we have built a very big market. And it is one of the most promising regions in the world. Currently, it is the fastest growing region. And it is promising to even expand much further. But now, ourselves are not agreeing on very basic things. If today we are listening to all presidents, actually, they were alluding to that. When President Kenyatta was talking, when our own president was talking, they were alluding to the fact that we have failed as a region to agree on the basic things which we need to use as our energy or our strong points to gain bargain for. Because now, EPA, we cannot benefit when one country is signing, another one is saying no. You know, since the beginning, I will lose some diplomacy here. Since the beginning of the implementation of this protocol, especially when we started entering the customs union there, Tanzania, which is the second largest economy in the region, actually was very, very clear that they were following the mercantilist view. They were not ready to even open up to the fellow
East Africans
partner
states.
Yes. They started bringing in a few non-tariff barriers in a customs union. These things of yellow card and so on and so forth. The other day I was reading, for example, they don't want sugar from Kenya, and the vice versa also. Kenya is saying it's a beg my neighbor policy. So when you have such a kind of a conversation which does not bring what she was talking about, to get a big guy leading, for example, Kenya and Tanzania should be leading this. But now, it's actually, let me tell you, had it not been for President Museveni and continuing to push for this integration, I don't think we would be here today. Because it's like a personal project. Is pushing those guys to let us do it. We can do it. The other day,
and that could be its also greatest undoing.
I don't know.
Professor Mwambutsa-Ndebesa, what is propelling this kind of suspicion amongst the regional leaders? Yet they're supposed to carry projects forward for the benefit of the entire region.
Thank you. I think we could be having the treaty, East African Community Treaty. We might have the Customs Union Protocol, Common Market Protocol. Now we are grappling with the Monetary Union Protocol. We could put these things in place, but when we still have mental borders, you could remove the physical borders, but with the mental borders still intact. And these mental borders, among other reasons, they exist because we do not have harmonized ideology. We don't have a harmonized ideology within the region. We don't have harmonized norms. We don't have harmonized legal systems. And therefore, East Africa is still a geographic expression. There are certain basics that are not there and which we should be working upon to bring about. There is, of course, the challenge of awareness. There is still a challenge of sovereignty. There are some countries that want to still maintain their sovereignty, I think among them.
But we haven't even reached the political integration level. We are still at a level of economic integration.
No, so sovereignty, we are talking about...
We haven't even gone to the monetary union.
There is even economic sovereignty.
Yeah.
Economic nationalism, economic sovereignty. Countries like Tanzania has got those strong sovereignty norms. And unfortunately, the East African Community Treaty and the procedures and systems that we have in place are not strong enough to create sanctions for those who renege on what they agreed upon.
Okay.
For example, before you intervene, the East African Community Secretariat in Arusha has no teeth to bite. There are many of these East African community countries renege on the rules that they set themselves to do. However, the Secretariat in Arusha has no powers to reign on any of these member states in case one does not abide by what it agreed to fulfill. And therefore, we still have a challenge of a legal framework and institutional framework to give more powers to Arusha, but also to convince these different partner states to cede some sovereignty to Arusha so that Arusha reigns on member states to implement what they agreed upon.
Okay, when it comes to that, the issue of funding is key. I can see $75 million is required for the full implementation of priority projects. And all leaders were clear that this is a tall order. How can the region sustain its project without a clear source of funding? Isn't really this a fallacy?
But what kind of projects are those? Because, you know, maybe I just wanted to go back to that issue about the, you know, the way forward, you know. Because I think we need also to rethink integration the way it is at the moment. Are we moving too fast? The monetary union, the common market protocol, we haven't concretized it. We go to the monetary union, then we sign the tripartite because we already, yeah, exactly, customs union, yeah, not yet done, common market protocol, monetary union, political federation, and in between we are negotiating. We have completed the tripartite, COMESA, SADC, and EAC. We have completed the CFTA, you know. And at the end of the day, when people feel they are lost, feel they don't benefit from what's going on, they go back, they look inwards. But maybe to go back to the issue of the 70 million of key projects, the money wouldn't be a problem because countries borrow money. But for me, what I'm asking, where is this money going? Because when you look at the current situation, the entire region, the economy of the entire region is ailing. When you look at the economy of Uganda, you look at the trade deficit, which is going up every day. The indebtedness is going up every day. When you look at the summit today, they are looking at infrastructure project, which is okay. We need infrastructure, but can it be able to solve the economic crisis we are in? I think that those are some of the issues.
Isn't Uganda on a right trajectory to solve the trade deficit? I'm talking about if you look at our export to Kenya, at least now we export more to Kenya than we've been importing. And that has happened in the last 1 year or maybe 1 year and a half. thanks to agriculture and maybe a few...
No, trade in the region is smoothing.
Yeah.
I think
but for Uganda to be able to export
would be very unfair to this integration process if we try to portray it as a failure, that we are not moving in the right direction. I think we need just to ask who's driving the process of the integration. Because by and large, there are two sets of groups of people. There are those who are export-oriented kind of mindset within the region. Then there is the rent-oriented. There are those people who are looking at their small, you know, which the professor was referring to as nationalism, and so small territories. You know, the customs officer doesn't want to lose that job. The guy who's managing a small province somewhere near a border doesn't want to lose it. You'll find that these are the people who are drailing us. But by and large, when you look at the figures on the trade, really, over the past decade, the trade is smooth.
But this is what the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development says, Dr. Mukisa Kitui.
Yeah.
He says intra-East African trade has gone down by 23%, while trade between East African countries and other African countries is going up. So somebody would ask, is it the common market a fallacy?
Not really. I don't agree. I agree with Ramadan.
Dr. Mukisa is an expert in this. They have noted a decline in
He's the head of UNCTAD, and they have the figures. But I don't know about the decline. But when you look at the anatomy of the products we are trading in the region, we trade in value-added products. Even Uganda, in fact, when you look at the plastics, and at least we are trading value-added products, and which is also good for job creation and manufacturing and industrialization, which is different from when we are exporting to Europe, where we are exporting completed raw materials. So whether it's declining, but there is also hope that if we put things right, it's a good trade internally within the region. It can help us to develop some value chains. It can help us to industrialize.
We are not adding value. I have seen trucks, Kenyan trucks, Rwandan trucks, in Mubende, in Kamwenge, in Kiriandong, taking maize the way it is, from the field across the border. No value added. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we can continue with this discussion. Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Mr. Ramadan Govi, Mr. Mwambutsa Ndebesa, and Madam Jen Nalunga, and we're discussing the East African community integration process. Currently, there is slow growth for many East African economies, in fact, including Uganda. And you see, most of these countries want to borrow. Even Uganda, the other day, we were just reading, they want to borrow to pay salaries. How can we keep hope alive in the region when some ailing economies need resuscitation and bailouts, Jen?
It's true what you are saying. The economies are ailing, but for any country, you need an income. You need to produce. You need to generate income at national and at household level. And when you look at, and I go back to what you were talking about, to the 70 million for infrastructure projects. Infrastructure is important, but we also need to put money in the productive sectors. When you look at our budget, Uganda's budget, the budget for the Ministry of Trade and Industry is just 0.5% of our budget. When you look at the budget of agriculture, it's 3.8%. These are the productive sectors, trade and industry and cooperative, 0.5. You know, yet we need, like we say in Seattle, we need to walk on two legs. We need the infrastructure, but we need to put money in the productive sector. Let us put money in agriculture. Let us add value.
Where exactly in agriculture? You have to prepare the agriculture ministry to be able to even handle that money, because I know of a year when they had even take back the money in the treasury because they could not use it.
To put, you know, just look at the challenges of administration. Look at just the coffee. put more money in coffee, you know. Let us, at least for the time being, even if we export it raw, it will increase incomes. So when you say it was taken back, the issue isn't that it was a lot of money, but maybe the way it's administered. But we need to
what I'm saying, you have to go back and work on the administration.
That doesn't take a lot of
time and effort. It does, because if you are crying little money and the money is being taken back, there's an issue there, Jen.
There is an issue. But what I'm saying, organizing ourselves internally shouldn't be a really big challenge. But what I'm saying, we need to be able to look at our productive sector, put our house in order. We need to produce, we need to add value, we need to trade.
In fact, that is the word you've said, putting our house in order, including the ministry that are supposed to receive that money. Put them in order so that they have the capacity to absorb it and use it, and then we see value out of it.
Exactly.
But I'm sure the viewers who are watching now, they are seeing a picture in the background where the president of the East African region were launching the standard gauge railway. I think that was around 2014. And Kenya has moved so fast, Mombasa to Nairobi. Uganda is even yet to begin seriously, because it appears that Nairobi has not seen the economic benefit of bringing the standard gauge railway up to Busia or Malaba or wherever it is. So,
but before we go to the railway, I think we need strategic thinking in the East African region, and also where to invest and where not to invest. We find that the problems of agriculture, in my opinion, is actually that it is rain-fed. And we have sung the song of irrigation, but nothing has been substantially done.
You have not heard of the Kawumu solution?
You mean the one of using a plastic bottle?
It worked the other day.
That is a model for East African integration? I don't think so. What I would think so is that we should invest in this whole issue of irrigation, constructing dams. Somebody was talking about even that when we are constructing roads and we have got all these
runoff water,
caterpillars and whatever, why can't we have integrated planning so that along the way these caterpillars that are constructing roads can also dig some dams somewhere and we get water, but also very dams. But also, when we are investing, there is a strategic investment that we are missing out, which has got higher returns to the economy. That is investing in technology development and knowledge. We are living in the era of the knowledge economy, and we need turnaround. I wonder why, for example, the summit that is ongoing is not talking about the research agenda and technology development. We cannot catch up with the rest of the world unless we invest in knowledge production. But you see, our performance in schools is very poor. The results are getting out, and we are declining even in science subjects. So we need also to strategize and ensure that we invest in knowledge production and have concerted planning, possibly even revive East African Examinations Board. In our days, we used to do exams of East African Examinations Board, and I think those exams were well administered and managed, unlike today when you see a lot of leakages and what have you. So we need to invest in that area of knowledge production, technology development, research and development, and this is where we shall catch up with the rest of the world. But a situation where you find almost all the East African countries are not patenting almost anything, or if we patent, it is very few patents that we have developed in any year. We are living in a knowledge economy, and unless we invest heavily in research and development, I don't think we shall catch up. We shall remain behind the rest of the world. So that is, for me, the way to go.
Okay, the knowledge economy, which is here and we cannot avoid it. But even in the agricultural sector, or even the production sector, if Uganda is not producing anything, we're not going to move our people out of poverty.
Exactly.
Because there's nothing we are selling to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
Ramadan, what are we producing? What are we producing? What can we produce?
I will start with the statement you said that the regional economy is ailing. And now that the leaders are in town and They are trying to strategize on how to build on the infrastructure, to build the momentum.
But a short while ago,
I
you
think
told us that East Africa is growing very fast.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to come to.
Yes.
I wanted to first clarify on that. Actually, the entire global economy hasn't been doing well. And in Africa, this region has been the fastest growing region for the last 7 years, consecutively, East African region. Of course, there are those which are
maybe because they are including Ethiopia, which seems to be...
No, without Ethiopia.
But what this economy should tell us is the nature of growth.
Yes.
In which sectors are we experiencing growth? In the telecommunication industry?
We are going to come to that. We are going to come and split the hairs. But we need to first of all understand that, first and foremost, the economies around the world haven't been doing well. The global economy has been shrinking. But recently, there has been hopes for recovery. Actually, projections by all bookmakers are indicating that 2018 and 2019, the economies globally are going to recover. They have even projected upwards by about 0.2 percentage point in terms of growth. And East Africa is still leading the pack at about 5.9% this year of 2018. And we go to 6.1% in 2019. But those are projections, and you know, always they are made on assumptions, sometimes which are wild. But there are points of optimism, and maybe that's what we need to discuss. How do we take advantage of what they are pointing at this region to take advantage and grow faster? Commodity prices are recovering on the global market. Agricultural prices have recovered in the euro area, have recovered in Asia. And therefore, countries which are predominantly commodity exporters like us should take advantage of that. When you look at also the euro area itself has recovered. So we are expecting more demand, effective demand, to come. Now the question is, do we have what to, and I'm coming to your question, do we have what we are going to supply to these markets, which or the demand which is recovering globally? The short answer is we don't have. As a region, we need to work so hard to recover ourselves, because our big brother Kenya has had its own, bad toll. Actually, it's now one of the weakest points in the region, surprisingly. Why? They borrowed too much. We have borrowed here. We are quantitatively we are at around 38–40% of our GDP. We are not agreeing on the exact figure, but it should be around, hovering around 38–40. Kenya, they already 56% of GDP, moving towards around 61% by the end of this financial year.
The other day, I had President Uhuru Kenyatta saying that at least they are doing much better than the rest of countries.
Yes, they have been using that money, though, to construct infrastructure, like we have been doing. The only difference is that for them they had the local content aspect catered for. But they have had also certain issues, and I don't want to concentrate on discussing them. I want to come back home and look at ourselves. For us, the biggest challenge we've had is the poor public investment management. That even when we borrow the money and we're looking at this infrastructure which is on the picture here, how do we get the standard gauge railway, the pipeline, and all other things we are trying to put across? We have failed to manage them well. First, there are a lot of delays in implementation of projects. I've heard the president lamenting several times, even today he was lamenting, how government officials are sleeping, how they can't do anything, the world is moving faster, the region is moving faster than us. That lamentation has been there. Secondly, we are building these infrastructure projects very expensively. And this is an aspect of corruption. In a lot of internal trading, people get to, those who are privileged with information, They go and buy land, you have to compensate them. The corruption itself in the compensation it has caused us a very big deal. Then the quality of the infrastructure itself also comes in. Some of these roads of ours, we have been borrowing a lot of money to construct. They break down before even we have commissioned them.
Using them.
So there's a very big problem there.
That's
But
true.
the spirit of borrowing and investing in infrastructure was a good spirit in Africa, because they agreed at AU, let us now concentrate on bridging the infrastructure gap. The challenge is many countries like ours do not build the capacity. The governance issues were very real. They underestimated them, and they have come to bite us. Now we are having a huge debt. The debt, you know, quantitatively, the officials will tell you it's not yet bad because we are not yet 50% of GDP. But that is quantitative. Qualitatively, and this is where IMF has been pointing them. Look at, for example, how much are you paying for interest? Now in Uganda, it's number 2 on the budget.
It is.
That means we are going to squeeze a villager, somebody who's digging a few sacks of maize
To pay taxes.
to pay for this day.
Mr. Mambuti and Devesa,
Yes.
talking about the budget, when you look at the budget framework paper 2018-2019, the second biggest item there is debt servicing, not even debt
Interest,
repayment,
interest, yeah.
servicing the interests.
Yeah.
So are we not likely to find ourselves hemmed in a certain corner, let me call it a debt trap as a country?
You see, borrowing would not be so necessarily negative. The challenge is when you borrow, where do you invest? That should be the fundamental question.
Most cases it is in consumables.
Exactly. That's why we are saying.
No. We are investing in infrastructure.
But even the other day, we were supposed to borrow and put in pay salaries and wages.
That is where now we are going.
And I don't think that we are necessarily even borrowing and investing in infrastructure, because by then much of the borrowing increasingly is becoming domestic borrowing from the banks, which are also by the are foreign banks. So even that one is like foreign borrowing, because that's not money that we that belongs to us. And by the way, before we go even further about this debt question, I wanted to address the question of the growth in East African region. Which sectors? For example, in Uganda, the biggest sector, the sector that is growing very fast, or the biggest sector now, the ratio to GDP, is actually the services sector, where most of Ugandans are not employed. Agriculture, where about more than 75% of the population is employed, contributes about 22 to 23% of ratio of GDP. Actually, it is the lowest contributing sector. When I hear most people saying agriculture is the backbone of the country, maybe backbone in the sense that it feeds us.
It has so many people.
But in terms of contributing to the national economy in the GDP ratio, it is the least, 22%, whereas the highest is services. And services, you include things like the hotel industry, you are talking about the banks, you are talking about telecommunication companies, you are talking about oil companies. And who are the owners of this services industry? The services industry is foreign owned. And we have got this liberalized capital account where anybody can make money, can make profit, and repatriate it 100% or more than 100%. Whereas some countries like Ethiopia, which my sister here was talking about, they don't have a liberalized capital account. They keep some money within the country. So we need to review our liberalization policy so that we keep some of these proceeds that accrue from our economy. But today, most of the economy is foreignized, and yet the 10-point program was complaining or complained about the hemorrhage of the economy, and yet they are doing the reverse, where our economy is being foreignized, and the biggest sector, which is the services sector, which is foreign owned, it repatriates all our proceeds out of the country. That explains why even when we talk about the growth in the economy, like 5% growth, it is not felt in the pockets of citizens, because it is growth in a sector that is not owned by the citizens. And this applies to most of the regions in East African community. So, Mr. Economist, when you are talking about East Africa experiencing higher growth rates compared to the rest of Africa, it is growth in which sector? Is it growth that will translate into human development, or is it growth?
Growth is always good.
Growth is always good.
No matter where it's coming from.
It doesn't necessarily
economy has to grow.
It doesn't necessarily translate into human development.
Oh, by the way,
what is the purpose of growth?
Let me first clarify this.
Is the purpose of growth having infrastructure, or
no.
growth is quality of life improving?
We're on the same page, Prof. What I wanted to clarify is this. No country can ever transform without growth.
That's true.
The quality of growth comes in when you have, first of all, grasped what we call drivers of the fundamentals.
Grow without developing.
Yeah, I know.
And Uganda, we are growing.
I know.
But
that is
but
growth.
We are not developing.
Let me first clarify this. That's growth.
The figures are good, but we are not feeling
we
it.
Don't.
We must sustain
we are like
our growth.
Animal farm.
What Prof is saying,
let us reduce on the figures.
when we don't drive growth in the sector which employs so many people, that growth cannot be sustained. Sure. And if a country to develop or to transform, it has to sustain growth. You have to grow. It doesn't matter whether you grow at a lower pace, but you sustain it for a longer time. The problem we've had in so many countries in Africa, not only Uganda, not East Africa, but African countries, that's why we are almost uniform. When you look at our economies, they are quite so similar. It's because we have failed to sustain growth. Only one country, about two in Africa, have sustained growth in the past 3 decades. That's Mauritius, Seychelles, and maybe South Africa, which already had developed that
And
capacity.
for Mauritius and the other countries, because of the tourism sector that have developed so much.
No, what we are saying, they built that discipline is talking about of generating growth in the sector which employs the people. Because in Mauritius, there are about 2 million people, and they built industries, especially sugar and textiles. And then they employed so many people in those sectors. Then so tourism just brought
so Jen, the problem here that I see, the economists and the historian talking about, is that we have the biggest population of our country contributing less to our GDP. How do we turn that 75% of our population should also be contributing the biggest chunk to the GDP?
But you know, we go back to the whole issue about organizing our agriculture. Look at agriculture today. It's agriculture of affection. People are not directed on what to produce. Extension workers are not there. The markets are not there. Like you have said, Kenyans go, or the private sector people just go directly to the farmers, buy the maize at very low price. You know, even the marketing is not organized. Our agriculture is not organized at all. That the agriculture sector would be contributing so much to our economy, but it isn't organized. Look at, for me, when you look at Operation Wealth Creation, they have done some work, but really if we want to get from point A to point B in our agriculture, we need to do much, much more than that. And then, to go back, I wanted to go back to that whole issue about growth. There is also this debate.
Address the nature of growth.
Exactly. And then also have indicators of growth other than GDP. We can look at the export, value-added exports. How much are they increasing? You know, so we need to have certain indicators instead of having in this comfort zone that we have very nice figures. We are growing, the economy is growing, yet the people are so poor. And you tell them, you know, it's the fastest growing region. Uganda is the fastest growing economy. I'm not an economist, and I don't understand it. You know, so we need to look at other indicators and be able to see that we are not growing. If we look at, for example, our exports, value-added
exports. Among the Pygmies, we are the tallest.
Should we be celebrating?
And we should be really, you know, we should.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back,
we are the tallest.
we're going to take a break, and when we come back, let's concentrate on those infrastructure projects, because Uganda is building a 600 megawatt dam. and another 180 megawatt dam, Isimba and Karuma, which maybe will bring a total of about almost 800 megawatts if they are complete. But today, we have a surplus of around, I'm told, 100 megawatts.
Yeah.
So does it make economic sense to have all that, and then we're going to have redundant power, which you are paying for quite some time? We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara, and my guests tonight are Mr. Ramadan Gobi, Mr. Mambo Tandevesa, and Madam Jen Nalunga. We're discussing the East African community and the economies of the 5 partner states. I think now there are 6 partner states, including South Sudan. We have embarked on building the infrastructure, including the power dams. Karuma was supposed to give us about 600 megawatts, Isimba 180, but we have a surplus of 100 megawatts now. I just do not imagine what's going to happen, because in the next 1 year, Karuma will be on the grid, and so is Isimba. And if we have now a surplus of 100 megawatts, and you bring in 700 megawatts, and I'm sure we shall even be paying for the power that we're not consuming. Never mind that only 20% of Uganda's population is connected to power.
Patrick, leave the statements of wise people. Do we have surplus electricity in Uganda?
Well,
because it's hardly 20% of Ugandans who have access to electricity. The entire country is in darkness right now. When you move around, if you flew over Uganda right now, you know there are those guys at NASA who take pictures, Earth at night.
Africa is still a dark continent.
Africa is dark.
In that
well,
context.
but they are telling us so at the power generation.
Yes.
At the power generation, in reality, there's 100 megawatts.
So this is what we need
It's
to
available.
do. We
That's
need
available.
more electricity, and then transmit it. Let us first invest in generation. We have our electricity in there, and then get money and build transmission lines.
But there is a
What
cost.
about the cost?
There must
the
be.
price?
Let me tell you, everything in life will have a
Ramadan,
cost.
I come from a
But
village
how
somewhere in
much?
Kenjoju,
Yes.
in Ngezi to be exact.
Yes.
I do not think all people there can actually afford, even if the power is passing through over their hands.
Of course, they
To
can't
have power.
afford. They can't afford without economic activity. You know, it's chicken and egg. Which should come first? You must build the power. You know, infrastructure. Africa, why we are backward? It's because we don't have infrastructure. Everywhere in the world, people do not have necessarily to first afford something before it is provided. What they did, they built these things, and at first it wasn't easy. They made losses. Actually, the states had to pay every year the fiscal deficits they were running to provide public services. Because even washing machines in Europe, women could not afford them on the market. In the Netherlands, when they invented the washing machines, the governments had to pay to provide washing machines to every home as people build the capacity. Then later, they charged them to pay the arrears, and they provided these things to the people. So my point is, we already have a lot of challenges in this region. But one thing we shouldn't compromise on is the need for infrastructure. Roads, railway, electricity. I'm not saying that we should get them at any cost. We need to manage those costs. But the bottom line is we need to agree that we must have electricity generated. Because look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia is far poorer than Uganda in per capita levels, if you went. But Ethiopia built 2 big dams that changed the entire game.
They are still building the Grand Renaissance Dam.
Yes,
It's not yet
and
complete,
they are
by the way.
building more. And why have they managed to industrialize? Because electricity is cheap.
So, but
5
does
cents.
it mean we are going to have it cheap? Because
Oh yeah, we shall eventually have it cheap.
But
But
we
you can't
don't
have it cheap
own
when it's not there.
But we liberalized
The
this.
Bujagali one is 11 cents.
11 cents, but they told you they are renegotiating it to ensure that Mr. Aga Khan is giving some
because
money.
you see,
and
they are
renegotiate
are sectors
that
in
dam
any
we got it,
country
that
which shouldn't
dam.
be liberalized, which shouldn't be privatized.
Oh yeah, I know.
So
Like we made a lot of mistakes.
we have privatized it, even if we have that surplus. it doesn't mean that our people at home, our industries will get it cheaply.
But we should get electricity generated. That one we need to agree.
I agree. Patrick, before we leave that topic, for me I want to ask, when you look at the economy the way we are not exporting. Even coffee, we are not. Even beans, we are not. Green beans, we are not exporting. And today, the biggest challenge, the biggest need for a country like Uganda is to produce and export. Even if it's beans, green beans, even if it's flowers, even if just basic things like even coffee. And I'm asking myself, if we have limited resources, where should we put that limited resources? Is it more in infrastructure, in generating all these megawatts, or should we put it in agriculture, in trade and industry?
Because I think she makes a point. If what happens if, assuming the standard gauge railway is finished next year or the other year, and it goes to Pakwach, it comes to Kasese, what is it going to pick in Kasese when it's going back to Mombasa?
Let me first answer this, Prof, for your intelligence. Patrick, how will the people of Pakwach and Kasese get the incentive to produce when the little they are producing is rotting away in the gardens?
Why is it rotting? Because they are not, because there is no railway. Is it rotting because there is no railway?
Because there are a number of things which are not in place.
What?
One, they can't store, they can't add value, they can't transport to the market. Because raw as it is, there is a market.
So
it isn't a viable market, by the way.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so at least there should be some effort in adding value.
Yeah.
There should be some effort in the storage, in the regional silos. Yeah. Though I've seen Mr. Mandela doing some work as at an individual level somewhere here in Busega.
Yeah.
Things like those.
No, a number of efforts are scattered across the country.
I think the argument here should not be whether we should not have infrastructure or
but how
have
do we balance?
Else. How do you strike a balance? How do you balance infrastructure with other needs of economic planning?
Yeah.
And this brings us to integrated planning. We need to have integrated planning, but we also need to have debates around these issues. We cannot claim here, for example, that we know it all, neither does the state know it all. But I think this brings us back to the question of good governance and democracy. We need to have spaces for debating and discussing some of these issues, bring the minds together, and then we need a responsive states in this African community region. That when people complain and talk about something, there is a responsive state. But as long as we don't have responsive states, for example, we have been having national development plans and the National Development Authority. I normally say that we have got a National Development Authority without authority. You just find the National Development Authority giving its advice, planning, but the Minister of Finance and other ministries,
the
National Planning Authority, doing something else. The National Planning Authority, for example, recommended that we should not multiply more districts, these municipal councils and all that. By the time they finished writing it down, more districts, more municipal councils were being created. So we need a responsive government where we talk about certain things and there is concern and it is taken into consideration. And that's why, Mr. Kamara, I talked about integrating good governance, human rights, democracy, rule of law, security into the East African community programs and agenda. But we seem to be having a one-way agenda, infrastructure. You could have that infrastructure, but it will not serve the people as long as states are not responsive to the people. You will have development of the state, you will have independence of the state, you will have integration of the state, not of the citizens.
I think you have a point there when it comes even to security now. You have people coming from South Sudan the other day migrating into northern Uganda on the biblical proportions in their thousands.
Mr.
You have now near the Sembliki Valley, you have people coming from the Congo running away because of the war. And I'm wondering how those people are supposed to put money in the oil sector For sure, they are going to put money in the oil sector
Kamara,
when the Sebuliki Valley in the neighborhood is on fire.
Patrick, I think that the problem is not necessarily infrastructure, which has caused us all these, challenges we have. Because look at our budget. The discretionary budget of Uganda is about 17 trillion shillings. Infrastructure budget is 4 trillion. Where is the other 13 trillion? Where is it going? How is it allocated? You will find a lot of fiscal indiscipline.
That's true.
The money is being wasted on things which we could really, remove from the face of the budget, and Uganda doesn't even.
There's a huge budget on travel alone.
Yes,
travel alone.
420 billion
on travel.
On travel this financial year. No, when you are there, you
shouldn't be on infrastructure. A big chunk on allowances.
The point is, the infrastructure is not the problem. The problem is the fiscal indiscipline. The money in infrastructure should be there, ring-fenced. But now government must stop wasting money on these other things which can be avoided, and the economy moves on without any challenge.
Let me ask, how much are we collecting?
We are collecting about 14 trillion.
How big is our debt?
You have gone back to the debt.
I just want to know. Because you're an economist.
The debt is debated, but now most people are putting it between $9 billion to about 11 billion.
In other words, 30-something trillion.
Exactly.
But let's
now you collect...
Mr. Kamara,
yes.
You are even complicating the mathematics.
No, I'm not.
Let me simplify the mathematics. The projected correction by Uganda Revenue Authority for the next financial year is around 14 to 15 trillion Uganda shillings. But the projected budget expenditure is 29 to 30 billion.
Yes.
That means we are going to sponsor our budget by only 50%. The other 50% is going to be borrowing, both domestically and externally. And that has got very big implications to the development process in this country. So don't complicate the mathematics.
By the way, that budget, it needs to be simplified for people to understand it. That figure you see, 29 trillion, it's not money. The money is 17 trillion. The rest, let me tell you, it is just some paperwork. Things like a debt rollover, that we had a debt, then when it's about to mature, then we can roll it again. And
but
they will put it in the budget. But
the deficit.
It doesn't necessarily mean that the budget of Uganda is 29 trillion. No. Forget about that, Prof. The budget of Uganda is about 17 trillion. The rest is air. Let me put it like that.
Let me open the lines. The Economist has said 17 and the other
is air.
11 is air. Hard to believe. But what are Ugandans thinking tonight? So my producer is opening the line so that you too can be a part of this discussion and tell us what you think. I ask you to be precise and concise so that we can at least take 3 or 5 or 6 callers so that they can be part of this discussion. I'm taking the very first caller online tonight. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Kamara, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. What's your name, sir?
The people in the studio. Kelly is my name.
Ken.
I think you tried to make the point, and I agree with you. I think there is a serious problem with the way the money is, funds are managed in the other sectors. It is not necessarily true that the money in agriculture is less. And everybody has been saying that, the money in agriculture is less. I think we need to understand what money we are talking about. One, there is money from the budget that goes there. And the question should be, what is the return on that money? It is very dangerous. You see, it's like when you have holes in a pipe and all you are saying is, pour there more water, pour there. The leakages are a lot. It's not going to achieve the purpose. The other issue about agriculture are the funds that people have to invest their own money. For instance, Bwana Kamara, you might have your money, your savings, and then you invest in agriculture. That money should be looked at. It's a lot of money. So, and to untap, to tap into that money, you have to provide opportunities to the population. You'll be surprised. all these monies you see, by the way, if you see where the investments are going, some time back, you would come to Kampala and you don't see all these buildings. But you look at our economy, the private sector, I mean, where the monies are going. All these hills in Kampala are covered with houses for accommodation, not business. And many of that infrastructure, if you look at the houses that are not occupied, all these hills, if you fly over Kampala, you'll be surprised. You think they are factories. You find a house that is really...
So you're saying our money is locked up in that?
Of course, even individual money. Yeah, that's where they are putting the money, because, you know, our culture here is in big houses. People are building homes. Okay? The other one, infrastructure is required. And you tried to pin down the economists. I think, let me inform the lady. You see, the cost of transporting goods by road, whatever it is so high that it makes whatever agricultural produce you have uncompetitive. If you get the railway in place, the cost of transportation and competitiveness of Uganda's products, no matter whether they have value added or not, is going to increase 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
Okay? Now, the other thing that needs to be looked at seriously, and this is where we really need to debate, is the cost of capital. And this is a problem in the whole of Africa. Let me tell you, you know, it's really ironical. Now, Bank of Uganda has tried to reduce the rate, you know, the bank rate. But all these banks have refused to bring their rates down. Can any economist tell us why that is so? It's incredible. There is no way you can have, you know, investments going on and growth and all that with such, you know, a high rate of interest. That has to come down. Now, they do fear, which is really also ironical, they do fear that if you bring that rate down, you are going to cause inflation.
Okay.
And that is so surprising.
Thank you very much,
in
Ken.
a country.
Thank you very much, Ken. You made your point, and your point is taken. My panelists will respond. Let me take maybe 2 more, and ask the producer to turn up the volume in here so that my guests can hear properly. Taking another call online. Hello.
Yes, hello.
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 Yes, good evening, ma'am. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yes.
You are on air. What's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Regina. I'm calling from Tinda.
Okay, Regina, you're on air, madam.
Yes, I think I wanted to concur with what the presenters were saying about backward and forward linkages. I think that's what we're looking at. If you're trying to put up the railway up to Kasese, then what are we going to be getting from Kasese? You're looking at backward and forward linkages, which should be promoted.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, Regina. Let's take another caller online. Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Claude. I'm calling from Chalwajala.
You are calling from Kabalagala?
Chalwajala.
Chalwajala. You're on air, sir.
Hello, Kamal.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make a few comments. Yeah, in response to your issue of returning money to the treasury,
okay,
the ministries. It is very hard if money, for example, for the last quarter, is sent in June. The procurement process of about 50 million will take over 20 working days. So what do you expect for such a person to do? And it's also a performance parameter. If you save money and take back what? The treasury. Then secondly, the issue of railway. I actually saw some people complaining in Kenya. The railway line was done, and someone was analyzing the cost of transporting, say, from Mombasa to Nairobi. Let me put it in Uganda shillings. You save, let's say, about 30,000 to transport commodities from Mombasa to Nairobi, and then the commodities are left at the station. Then you have to transport them back, maybe to the town center or your warehouse, wherever it is, and you actually go and realize that the cost is actually what? much more than even the roads. So unless we look at the actual where someone is going to benefit, but some of these costs we are incurring are actually not taking us anywhere. Because you're putting in, you look at it as a saving, but the other costs that are actually not being calculated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me take the last call online. I have a caller. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. Hello. Okay, let me pick just one more. Looks like that one was not ready to speak. I pick another call online. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Chalwajala.
Chalwajala.
Yes, please.
What's your name, sir? There is an echo because you have turned up your volume. We cannot have a healthy conversation unless you turn down. So, and the baby, I don't think is going to talk. So for that matter, I'm going to close the lines. Thank you for those who have contributed because you have added value to our discussion. Okay, Jen, what do you make of that?
Very good suggestions. The first one about agriculture, that the money is enough. The 3.8 million is enough. I don't know enough for what really. You know, because what we are looking at is really to modernize our agriculture in terms of having irrigation, in terms of cold storages, in terms of having extension services, silos, a really, really, really modern agriculture. No? So the 3.8% is not enough at all. And I don't agree that that money is enough. He's talking about money being locked up in houses. It's because agriculture is shaky. You grow your maize today, you don't know the price. You know, you don't know how much. We don't have a minimum price for our products. You know, so we need to have certainty in our agriculture. Then the issue of infrastructure. I didn't say that we don't need infrastructure. We need infrastructure. What we are saying, we have to balance. We have limited funds. How do we balance that money? Infrastructure, then productive sectors, trade and industry. And these are the forward and backward linkages Regina is talking about. Unless we add value to our agriculture will die, you know, we will be dead. Okay. So the backward and forward linkages are very, very critical.
All right.
And we need to
our
put
time is
money
almost
there.
out. So
okay.
let me, Professor Mwambutsa, what's going to be your concluding remark and putting also in perspective what the callers have said?
Oh, my concluding remarks. I do agree with one of the callers that the cost of capital, the cost of power, and the cost of transport are partly responsible for the collapsing of businesses in Uganda. You can see most of these supermarkets have collapsed and are collapsing. And if those giants are collapsing, what about the small businesses around? But I think to put the perspective of our debate in the East African integration process is that we need to have integrated economic planning in the region. Apparently, we don't even have one vision. We have got multiple visions. There is Uganda has 20, is it 20 what?
2040.
2040, the another country 2030, another one 2020. I think there is need to have a common vision and then integrated planning within the East African region. But we cannot do that unless there is commitment to have integration, but two, that, which I said before, that we need to cede powers to Arusha so that there is integrated planning by the bureaucratic civil servants in Arusha, who should also be actually be supervised, politically supervised, so that they also don't mess up our planning processes in Arusha also. Hence, the need for the adoption of the good governance protocol, and we have harmonized plans and laws. Even institutions, apparently our institutions are also not harmonized. We also need to have actually our professions harmonized so that an accountant here, a lawyer here, an architect here, whatever, he can go throughout this region and work anywhere. But unfortunately, we still have rules that prevent even free movement of people in the whole region. So there is still lack of harmonization of minds, harmonization of laws, harmonization of institutions.
And awareness.
Harmonization of, that's the mental borders I was talking about. And those need to be done. And therefore, Mr. Kamara, we should not actually over-concentrate on the economic agendas of the East African community integration at the expense of other agendas. We need governance agenda, we need institutional harmonization agenda, legal harmonization agenda, and educational harmonization agenda. That is when we shall have East African integration, an integrated East African community, not merely East African cooperation. What we do have now is actually East African cooperation, not East African integration, where the different sectors of the economy, where the peoples, the human beings are integrated, where the institutions are integrated, where the businesses are also integrated, where the norms are integrated, where ideologies are integrated. Otherwise, we are talking about of a mere geographic expression called East African community.
Thank you. Ramadhan Kobe, your parting shot.
I will do two quick ones. One is on the return of money to the treasury. Somebody commented on it, and I think it's a very critical thing, because when we study it as economists, we find that it's actually the poorest districts in Uganda that return most of the budgets which are given to them, because of capacity issues in absorbing that money, and also the bureaucracy. The money goes there late, and so on and so forth. So that one needs to be looked into. Districts like Mayuge, like Yumbe, like Nakapilipili, they are returning almost 60% of their, quarterly budgets. Then when you go to East Africa, I think we need some pro-people services on which the integration can be anchored. Why the old East African community is remembered by most of these people who lived around that time? It's because they had these things like airline, the East African airline. Why do we still have these ambitions of having a Uganda airline? Kenya has an airline which is limping. Rwanda has an airline. The other day was flying in it, going to Ghana, and we were almost half the board, in an Airbus. So why don't we get the thing together back and we say, let us have the East African airways or airlines, brought back. Things like the telecom sector. We can revamp it and bring it. Education. Why do we still have all these? You commented on the examination. Now, even the curriculum itself and other things. So these are things which will make people
appreciate
this kind of thing called East African community, feel it, and they work for it to develop it. Right now, the only integration we have done is perhaps marriage. People are marrying across borders, and it has helped us. Almost every weekend, a Ugandan is picking a wife in Kenya, a Kenyan is picking a wife in Rwanda, like that.
Which is okay.
That one is good. It's the only integration which has been actualized, other than also some economic.
Again, it's about regional integration. I think the spirit is willing. It's just the flesh which is weak. And I think if we put our mind to it, if our leaders are not selfish, if we pull in the same direction, if Kenya can be able and Tanzania take up that role of that being the hegemony, taking lead, I think we can be able to make it. The regional integration is a great project.
Jen Nalonga, thank you very much.
But based on what, informed by what? When you pick on Kenya, I think you are looking at economy. But if in my opinion, it would be Tanzania to be the hegemony if it would accept to at least cede some of its sovereignty and nationalism. Because I am looking at integration, which is based on social justice. And social justice and human development should inform the integration process, not this profit maximization.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, we'll discuss that
I'll
off
take them
air.
out. Jen Nalunga, thank you very much.
Thank
Mambutsa and
you.
Debetsa, thank you very much. And Ramadan Gobi, thank you very much. Maybe I'll have to re-echo the words of Mambutsa that these mental borders should go. You should have the people, let me say, of a patch, somewhere in Chawente and Aduku, buy into the idea of the East African community. Have the people in Nyahururu in Kenya buy into the idea. Have the people in Ruhengeri in Rwanda buying into the idea. And have the people in South Sudan in Kajokeji or even in Tanzania in Bagamoyo buying into the idea so that it is a people-centered kind of an idea of the East African integration. Good. And God bless you, Uganda.